much for that introduction. Thanks for having myself and Mrs. Shanley here. We're really excited to be here, and we are very grateful for your support. I am the Director of Elementary Education, and Miss Shanley has been here for a year. I joined her in July, and we have been working really hard on getting our schools up to date with new standards for math, reading, writing, and phonics, which always have to be the priority of the school district, right? Like, our job is to educate our children. However, if you are an educator or a parent or a caregiver of any sorts, you know that much more than academics is part of developing our youth. And that the saying, it takes a village and it takes many different things, could never be truer. And we are very grateful to the Rotary and for Pat for giving us an opportunity to expand on our priorities and to support the whole child. And today I want to give you a little bit of history and tell you about what we developed when Pat approached us and said, we have to do something and we can do better, and what we talked about and planned for and how it came together and why. The thing that I wanted to start with is just, you can change it, thank you, is that what we are essentially talking about is the opportunity to implement responsive classroom, and starting with something called a morning meeting in the day for every elementary school child. We have many elementary school children, almost 1,200 of them, that are in our care. Historically, about 15 years ago, this initiative was introduced to the district and teachers were trained in it because it is a research-based approach to supporting our children. However, there was not any professional development or any training in the last 15 years. So as you can imagine, teachers come, teachers go, administrators come, administrators go, and 15 years later, you have something that's on the schedule, and you're like, and you see what it is, and you're like, I'm not sure it should look like that, but I'm also not sure what it should look like. And then one of my big goals in the district is to bring unity to the 3 different schools and make sure that things look the same in all of those schools. And so that brings us to today. And essentially what we are so grateful for your funding for is an investment in our teachers and a training in how to facilitate morning meetings and responsive classroom over the next 3 years. But before I went into the specifics about the program, I just wanted to talk to you about just one piece of research that stands on bodies and bodies of literature about why investing in teachers matters. So this comes from a study done by Marzano in 2010, which shows that the skill of the teacher has a direct translation to the aptitude or the growth of the child. And so if you look at the teacher has a 50th percentile skill, in their study, they found that the predicted percentile rank for a student starting at the 50th percentile would mean that they would just stay flat. They would not grow. However, if we could increase that teacher percentile rank to the 70th, the child could move from the 50th to the 58th. To the 90th, they could move to the 68th. And if we could get their ability to increase all the way up to the 98th, they could go into the 77th percentile of growth from a child that started at the 50th percentile. And so that is why whenever as a team we talk about introducing initiatives or support for our students, we simultaneously speak about that with support for our teachers. Because if our teachers are the ones that are touching our students, and if our teachers are the ones that are implementing our programs, they need training and understanding into what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how to execute that. And so that is the reason why I just wanted to start with this one piece of research. Like I said, there's many, many others if you are really into research. Linda Darling-Hammond from Stanford has plenty of papers and analyses about it. Why we are choosing to invest in the teachers, though, because we believe that the teachers are the way to our children. You can, okay, thank you. So that's one piece of literature that we know makes a big difference. The second piece of literature that I wanted to share with you actually is a summary from the book, The Anxious Generation. And we just had some parents that are very passionate about it in town present this at our latest professional development day, which was on Monday. And we wanted to say that while we are trying to train our children to be ready for, you know, careers and aptitudes in math and an increasingly globally competitive marketplace, there is also a reality that our children are becoming more and more anxious, and that mental health is becoming a competing commitment with that. Now, if you read The Anxious Generation, one of the key things that I would be remiss if I didn't say is that a lot of the increased in mental health concerns are simultaneous to the release of smartphones. And however, they are worth noting because this is a reality of what we manage every single day. So while before we get into the classroom, we have teacher knowledge as a super powerful component, and then we have the reality of what's happening with our children. So we can see that there is a drastic increase in depression rates, hospital admittance for non-fatal self-harm, sorry, that was a typo, and anxiety prevalence that's happening across the United States in the last 20 years. I think the next one. Thank you. Okay, so for those reasons, we have decided that we think that it would be really beneficial to retrain our teachers in responsive classroom and to use that very valuable time that we have set aside every single day for 30 minutes to make it meaningful, to make it normed, and to make it look the same across all of our classrooms in all of our buildings, and to touch each of our 1,200 students equally. And so responsive classroom is an evidence-based approach that is rooted in social emotional learning, or SEL as we started with, and that it's focused on engaging academics, positive community, teaching effective classroom management, and developmental awareness. And so the goal is that teachers learn how to set the tone for the day and to create the conditions where students can develop academic, social, and emotional skills that they need in school and outside of school. And in one quick sentence, the goal is to create a safe, joyful, and engaging learning environment where students can thrive in all aspects and feel valued. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know that if somebody is hungry or if somebody doesn't feel safe, right, they can't learn. So the goal is to create an environment where every child can be the best version of themselves. And so what we are proposing is that over the course of 3 years, and I have the breakdown a little bit more explicit for you, that we train our teachers in this program. So year one, the goal is to introduce responsive classroom and really the morning meeting. And we are going to do that by utilizing practices that are going to help support those social emotional skills. One little example is that every single day the teacher stands and greets the children, and the children all greet each other. But if you've been around youth, my own 9-year-old included, you know that that skill of greeting people when you enter a room is something that is not necessarily intrinsic and is something that we want taught to our children. It's also something that we think is going to make our community stronger, right? If every time you walk into a room, we greet each other, it's a way of making somebody feel seen and part of the community. So that's just like one little example of it. And so over the course of 2 half days, because we do have a limited amount of time when we can pull our teachers together for professional development, teachers will engage in this workshop. They will learn about the responsive classroom, they will learn about responsive teaching, positive community, effective management, engaging academics, how to manage discipline in a positive way. They will get a little introduction to teacher language, and then they will do some interactive modeling and role playing with it. And that would be our goal for the next school year. The second part in this series is improving teacher and student language. For those of you that have children or grandchildren, you might know that you can say something, but if you say the same thing differently or wrongly, it can lead to wildly different outcomes in how that child receives it. my own children included. This is again a one-day workshop broken down over the course of 2 days for, and by the way, when I say our teaching staff, our elementary teaching staff is 80 teachers. So this is 80 teachers who touch 1,200 students, where they're going to have they're going to have the opportunity to reflect and learn more beneficial ways to communicate. So they are going to look at different language, look at different words. They're going to develop a plan, and they're going to identify ways of course speaking and listening. And we know, much to our chagrin, right, that our children pick up and model our language. So the more positive and normed our language is with our students, the more it will be in our community. Just a quick practical example of this is, instead of saying something like, Danielle, stop doing that. Danielle, you need to pay attention. It could be something like, I really want to compliment the way that Pat is sitting up and is looking and paying attention, right? Like, that's a simple thing that, instead of putting one child down, again, takes care of the same classroom management issue of sitting still and paying attention, but does it by using positivity instead of negative reinforcement. So that's one example of that one. And then the next and final one is training session 3 is connecting morning meeting to academics. So this is when we help students understand how to transition from this morning meeting space where we've created this community, where we've created these norms for respect and trying our best, and how we treat our peers, and how that is going to look the same in our math class, our reading class, our writing class, our PE class, whatever it may be. And so it gives teachers the opportunity to just kind of work on how do we integrate this beyond this time throughout the day. And this would be year 3. So the overall implementation, as noted, is, again, there are 80 teachers, there are 1,200 students, and in year 1, we would like to introduce teachers to the Introduction to Responsive Classroom course. Year 2 would be that we would do responsive language. Year 3 would be connecting responsive classroom to academics. And then in year 4, in the year 28-29, the district would invest in getting our own teachers who've now completed these 3 programs to become certified trainers. And then as we hire new teachers, we can then provide our own job-embedded Madison-led professional development, so that the gift of the Rotary Club and PAT can live on in our teachers and in our students. And so those teachers that get trained, you know, if they have 20 years left and they have 20 students, it actually impacts 400 students. And that is the essence of our plan for implementing a responsive culture in the elementary schools in the Madison Public School District. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that language in session 2 there is real important, but having spent 23 years in the corporate world and taking a ton of offsites, what I learned was what's really important in communication, maybe above language words per se, is body language and tone of voice. Is that also emphasized in that session 2 there?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And go ahead, Danielle, do you want to talk about it?
Probably addressed in session 1.
In the morning, in the first morning?
Yes, because the question was the body language, I'm sorry, and tone of voice part of the session 2. I really think it's part of 1, because there are ways, I don't know how long it's been since you've been in an elementary classroom. But sometimes teachers choose to use very jarring ways of getting the attention of the kids. And they go, and the whole class goes, and it's this very loud thing. And every time I hear it, I just go like this. Because there are other things you can do. Responsive classroom has the chimes. We don't have the chime with us. We could use the chime. So it's this beautiful, delicate little chime. And the goal of the chime is that the sound of the chime dissipates. So when you hit the chime, it's very gentle sounding and it dissipates. And then the students know that by the time the sound stops making the sound, they need to be quiet. And it's much better than that kind of a thing. Or when teachers go, I'll wait, right? Those are the kinds of silly things that maybe we've grown up with, but that we're trying to change that approach. And I think Christy did a beautiful job of sharing, the overall goals with you, I think you probably realize that I am really good at hiring amazing people. Right? No, my belief is that you have to surround yourself with the best, absolute best people you can find, so that you can move mountains. And I think that with Responsive Classroom, she and I actually each have a lot of experience with Responsive Classroom outside of Madison, and I just found it to be the kind of thing that truly changes the culture of a school. It takes down, not that noise is a bad thing, because noise at recess is an awesome thing. It takes down the overall noise level of the school. It changes the way students and teachers and students and students and teachers interact with each other. It creates a sort of a holding environment of sorts for children in the classroom to feel safe enough to make mistakes, safe enough to grow and to not know the answer, and that becomes a very contagious thing. What morning meetings have become in a lot of places are things like, what did you do over the weekend? That's not really a morning meeting. Or, let's talk about what we do on St. Patty's Day. That's not really a morning meeting. A morning meeting is more meaningful, where we talk about, and there are lots of different activities, but where we talk about how as individuals we are part of this group. Not how I'm something special outside of here that I'm going to share with you. It's not a show and tell, for example. It is a building of community, and it's purposeful 180 days a year work. So I think that it will really help our teachers and our students to grow together. There is nothing more valuable than that teacher-student relationship, and this will cultivate that as well. So,
Is there any type of meditation techniques built into this at all?
Not per se meditation. I think it's, like if you're upset, take 3 deep breaths. I think it's more strategies to be aware of how you are showing up, and then how to get yourself into a place where you can learn and you can be the best version of yourself. But that's a separate curriculum that you could buy.
Yeah.
Are there other schools in New Jersey who have implemented this?
Oh.
And do you have examples of the school? Could you tell us some schools?
Yeah, I did it
You wanna
both
talk
in New
about it?
Milford and in Saddlebrook. It was very effective, and we did at some point we did partner with Yoga for Classrooms, which was a breathing thing. Really strategies for students to do individually at the desk, but this does lend itself to that, because another thing is when a student has this environment and is part of this environment, and let's say Christy's having a bad day, the rest of the students can recognize that Christy's having a bad day, and then you will see students go over to Christy and say, remember, take your breaths. And it really is can be very beautiful. And in Florham Park, I know that we partnered way back when and did it then, and I'm sure you probably did it.
Yeah. I think the thing to know is that she was the assistant superintendent here many years ago, Barbara Sargent, who later, I think who has recently retired but has gone on to lead other districts. And she introduced this initiative to Madison. So Madison School District was one of the districts where you would say, who does morning meeting? And a minute ago, they would say Madison does. Barbara Sargent, I think, has a similar philosophy to that of mine and Danielle, in that if you bring in a program, you have to bring it in all the way. There needs to be materials for the teachers, there has to be training, there has to be expectations, and there has to be a timeline, right? Like built into how you implement new programs, and then how you cultivate change. And so I believe that many years ago, where we are now is where we were. We're just trying to get up to date with it, because like we said, there's a lot of change that happens, in 15 years.
And if I may add to that, I think the piece that might have been missing, and I'm not certain because I wasn't here, but I think the piece that might have been missing is tapping into the leadership in our teachers to continue to do the work and to train others to do the work. And that's that, how do you keep this alive? It's like passing down, a recipe. You have to show the next generation how to do it for it to continue, or else,
You said earlier that the success of this is based upon teacher competency.
Mm-hmm.
How do you assess and judge teacher competency?
I pride myself in being in every elementary school at least once a week, if not more frequently. And I'm frequent in the classrooms, as is Mrs. Shanley, as are our principals. One of the responsibilities that we have given to us by the state is that we do observations, right? But that's once or twice a year that you go in and you observe a teacher. I can tell you that you can walk into a room and observations are 40 minutes, and in 10 minutes I can tell you who is learning, who is not learning, what the room environment is, who feels safe, what access do the students have to materials, who's running the classroom. It's one of those things that, as you guys all know in your own profession, that after you've done it for a while, you become very, very aware of it. And it gives us an opportunity also, though, to develop a common language, right? So, like, for instance, if Mrs. Shanley goes into a room and, hears the clapping and is like, that's really loud, right? And by the way, we're talking about all of our students, but there's also students who are neurodivergent who learning is harder for, right? Like, they are coming to school and they are the ones who have a hard time sitting still. They are the ones maybe with hearing loss, right? Like, a very common thing is auditory processing, where kids can't hear with background noise. Well, guess what a classroom is? Background noise, right? There are kids that are coming with reading difficulties and math difficulties and dyslexia, like many, many, many different things that make them not able to show up the same as their peers. And so when we go into a classroom, the first thing that does is it creates an environment, a research-based environment that's inclusive for all students and that has practices that are supportive for every child. But then the second thing that it does, to your point, is it gives us a common language as a district and as an admin team where we can say, we can give feedback to a teacher in a way that doesn't feel like an attack, right? It's I noticed that when you were trying to get your class back on task, instead of using affirming language, you were using negative language. Remember when we learned about that in morning meeting? Here's the sheet, or responsive classroom training, here's the sheet of language that you could use instead. So like, it just kind of creates this was our goal, we talked about it, and now when it's not in place, it's just an invitation and an opportunity to revisit, instead of somebody feeling like, why is she telling me to use that? I don't have to use that word, but now they have the why behind it, and it's just about little tweaks. So again, many answers to that, from experience, but also this gives us an invitation and an opportunity to reinforce what we've learned through commonality.
Thanks. In your parlance, does elementary include the junior school or not?
It does not, because we have something different at the middle school. So it's important for us to meet the students where they are, and middle school students are very special. I've had two. I've survived them both. They're very special and they have unique needs. So what we have at the middle school, actually this year we launched the Robin program. So that is a program that touches every child, every teacher, and offers programming for every parent. And it addresses middle school type issues. And in middle school, the morning meeting is not as much of a thing because they're not in one classroom all day, and so they don't have that. But instead we have advisory. So every other week there are advisory classrooms. So I, as let's say a school faculty member, would have my group, and every 2 weeks I'm meeting with my group, and we're working on advisory topics that are provided to us by Robin. And that those topics actually came from our own student needs assessment, where based on the feedback that we received from the students, the growing edge that we thought was necessary, and then they would provide us resources based on that. At the middle school, we have, a variety of things going on. We have puberty, we have students who are sort of coming out of their shells a little bit. Now they have cell phones. We've got social media, we've got, the girls are much bigger than the boys. We've got all kinds of wild things going on there. And very often we even talk to parents who are at their wits' end. How do I deal with this growing person that I don't even recognize? maybe who smells a little funny. That it's a very different thing, but we do have a program for them, and we really do believe in the value of having these types of programs for our students, just that not each one meets each grade.
Sure.
Yes.
Do you get parents involved at all in this program to support the great work you're doing in the classroom, where they can help reinforce that outside of the classroom?
We try.
Yes, we try. I think, I think that back to school night, I have the great privilege of, presenting at each of the back to school nights and letting the parents know what our initiatives are, what our goals are, what are some of the shifts and the change. So we will certainly introduce it to them. We will also be sure to, mention that this is a gift of the Rotary, because like I said, our competing commitments financially are
Limiting.
making sure our academics are in compliance with the state, right? We get audited by the state, and you need to have a curriculum and materials that are up to date with the new standards, and new standards come out every single year. It's a cyclical basis. So we will definitely announce that. We will also give parents an opportunity, like we have
To sit in on, like, a
coffees with the
parent.
superintendent and stuff to follow up with
Great.
them. So yes, we will,
That's great.
we will try.
This question will prove I wasn't paying attention. On the 4-year road, are the students and the teachers going down together, hand in hand? on
Yes.
this?
Yes, definitely.
So even though the teachers haven't got to the end of their training, they're doing what they've learned in that first year with the students?
Multiple years of training.
Yes, because it's 3 years of training, right? It's a 3-year program, and so we believe that after year 1 we will be stronger already, right? Like Mrs. Shanley said, the intent of morning meeting that's in our classrooms right now is that we come together as a community, because teachers haven't had training in it. Sometimes it's a share out of what your play dates and what you're doing on the weekends, and we all know that's the opposite of inclusive. But you don't know better until you're trained in it. So like instantly we see that as being a reward. So even though teachers won't get to the end for 3 years, and there will be some kids that will be in the junior school by the time we finish it, we do think that we will see instant results just in year 1. Yeah. Yes, of course.
Many of us participate in the reading to the second graders, and then also giving the dictionary to the third graders. I'm always impressed with the teachers.
They
I
are.
walk away on that. They're doing great. Are any of them individually trying to use these techniques without this whole program?
Yes, definitely. We are also impressed with our teachers. We have incredible teachers in Madison, and we value them, and our job is to support them, to support our students. Yes, I think that some of them are here when there was training 15 years ago, and they know what they're doing, and then I think some of them have tried their best to read up on it and pick up on it. There's actually a book about it, but we feel like it's our job to give them systemic and the same training for all 3 elementary schools. So, but it's already built in, so it's one of those things that we don't need to find more time in the day. We have it. How do we make this time more meaningful? So I think that they're going to be very open to that, because at this point, so many years later, I would say at least 60% of our staff, if not 75%, has not been trained, because it's just the natural attrition of when people retire and things like that.
You briefly mentioned cell phones. What is the district policy on cell phones in class?
And I was going to add to that even the teachers who were trained the first time around, 15 years ago plus, there were no cell phones. So the challenges in connecting with your students, and just not so much phones, but also pads, digital devices, or anything else that's a distraction. Get on mommy's phone, get on, the Netflix or whatever. So we are off and away through grade 8. Off and away through grade 8, and that includes phones and smartwatches and tablets, unless the tablets are part of the classroom and are being used instructionally. At the high school, it is off and away during instructional time. So that means that if it's the middle of a class period and you ask to go to the restroom, you shouldn't be on your phone in the hallway on the way to the restroom because it is still instructional time, and we know you're going in there to text your friends and check your Snapchat. We know what you're doing. So off and away through grade 8, and then off and away during instructional time at the high school. You know, kids use their phones for a lot of things. I happen to have a student who's a child who's a junior in high school. Her Google Classroom is on her phone. Her schedule is on her phone. Her communications from her coach are on her phone. They do use it for lots of things that are real and meaningful. And it was hard for us this year. We knew we wanted to limit it. We wanted to tighten the reins a little bit. But we also know that it is virtually impossible to police cell phones for 800 students. And it's so funny because I had a parent, hope that parent's not here. I had a parent reach out to me and ask me what the policy was going to be for the high school, because this sort of came up in New Jersey this year and across the country with the Anxious Generation book from Hate. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. What are you going to do in the high school? And I explained what we were going to do, and he goes, well, I just think that's unacceptable. I think that you need to get those locking devices, and you need to put the phones away, and kids need to immerse themselves in the learning. And I said, if you feel that strongly about that, I think you should take your child's phone from him when you drop him off at school.
Wow, good answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't want him to have it at school, you're sending him to school with $1,000 handheld device, and you're asking us to control it. So, right, like we have to partner somewhere. So we've created what we think works for us at the high school. And if they have a study hall or during lunch or whatever, they can use their
And
phone.
that parent's response was?
He didn't respond. So, I mean, it's some we do partner, but I say this all the time, 6.5 hours, that's all I have, right? We have 6.5 hours with these kids if you take out lunch, and we have 6.5 hours when we work all the miracles that we possibly can, and then the rest is on you all.
I think to piggyback off of that though, one thing that might be worth knowing is that we are working really hard to limit the amount of screen time that our
In the
students
classroom.
have in the classroom. Again, if you've not read The Anxious Generation and you have grandchildren or children, it is a very powerful book. But one of the big things in there that it talks about is that and again, those statistics come from that book that I shared with you, and is that the reason why kids are so anxious is because they're not getting the practice with the social time that we had, right? Like when we were kids before these devices, if it was snack time, you learned how to look at each other in the eye. You learned how to take turns, right? Like maybe if you were not being nice, you got smacked down a little bit, but it was appropriate because you were like 8, and that's okay. And it wasn't happening to you for the first time when you were, 20, and it was soul crushing because you didn't know how to manage that. So we are working really hard as an admin team to, to get resources into the school where we can replace technology programs that have been implemented. Like a perfect example of that is we had a very generous donation of $500 from the MEF this year per classroom that allowed us to buy books instead of kids reading on the computers. We still don't have enough books to phase out the computer program completely, like it's something that we're building in, but just in case you were wondering about the whole child and the impact of screen time, it is something that we are very aware of and that we are trying very hard. I feel like COVID pushed schools towards the technology, and now we are trying to be very strategic in taking it back. Like I very frequently tell my teachers, the American Association of Pediatrics recommends at most 1 hour of screen time a day. Parents need to be able to use some of that screen time, right? Like I'm a working mom, I have 3 kids. Sometimes I need to put my kids on a show so that I can make dinner or take a phone call or whatever it may be. Like we can't, as a school district, in our 6.5 hours exhaust that full hour. That's not appropriate, right? So it's something that, again, as we think about the whole child and beyond the academia, that is another one of the initiatives that we are trying to work on phasing out. It comes down to priorities and money and getting new resources.
And good choices for teachers too. this year, something that came up, like I am here exactly 1 year, was March 1st, and you're since July, and we're really trying to do the best we can in the time that we've had. We're getting incredibly granular in the things that we're dipping ourselves into. But one of the things that came up was that some teachers, not all, some teachers were showing like a cartoon video type thing during snack. And we put a stop to that. We said there's no video during snack. Well, what should we do? Play music. Go through the genres. Start with jazz. I don't know. Just play.
Put a deck of cards on the table.
Yeah. Play music. Get a puzzle out. Have the kids talk to each other. Start a topic of conversation. I find, something I've worked on much more with my younger. Now I have a 23-year-old and I have a 17-year-old. Something I had to work on a lot with my younger daughter was getting her to speak to the waiter and order her food. She was like, "Honey, just order it for me. I'm ordering it for you." Or to call the nail salon and book her own appointment. She's like, "What am I supposed to say? Tell them you would like a manicure." So it's this age, this generation of children are not communicating. So we are not taking up any of that extra time and integrating technology when it's not necessary. My children were making fun of me because I know all of these American patriotic songs. I could sing with the Rotary. I know you can sing all of your American patriotic
Well, when you
songs.
become a member,
Then
you'll,
I'll have to sing with you. So and they said, how do you know all these songs? And I said, because after the flag salute, whoever was the student of the day got to pick. The teacher had a record player, and you got to pick which American patriotic song you wanted them to play, whichever it was. And that's how you started your day, every single day in the classroom. They were like, "Mom, you're like a dinosaur." Yeah, I know. I'm a dinosaur that knows all the American patriotic songs. So that's what I said to the teacher. I'm like, "Play American patriotic songs." I know. But Bluey, save that for home and let the parents, control that. So we're working on a lot of different things.
Good for you.
Yes, a lot. One, if you are very interested in the cell phones and the usage with our students.
Oh, Dodger Delay.
Yes, one great resource is the Dodger Delay. It's a group of Madison moms who
And dads.
and dads, but it was started by I think
3 moms.
Yeah, a few moms who are very. One of the things that is in the book, The Anxious Generation, is that it can't just be you can't be the bad guy who doesn't give your kid the phone, right? You need a group of people who don't have the phone. And so they have come together. There's also something called a Wait Until 8th Pledge. That's wait until after 8th grade to give us a smartphone device. But those are very grassrooted and strong community partners that, like I said, the Dodgers Delay, that research came from their presentation to our teachers. I had them come present to our guidance counselors and our PE teachers about the impact of the phones and the power of play.
They loved it.
And they loved it. But that is a very, very big touch point right now in our community. So I think that we're all collectively together caring for the whole child. Obviously the support of the Rotary, the schools, and our parents are, not ignoring the fact that there's much more than academics that we need to support with our children, and that, COVID kind of rushed things forward with the electronics, and that now we can see some of the negative consequences of that. And we feel like this program goes back to that, right? Like I said, I'm sure that you have seen the kids who are in their devices and don't greet people, right? Or who have forgotten how to have like a reciprocal conversation. I know myself when I don't want to talk to anybody, what do? I pull out my phone and I'm like, I'm just going to check out and do this, right? Like it's a coping mechanism. But our job is to make sure that that's something that's done on occasion and not the norm. And we feel like this program is a piece to helping do that.
It's funny, we were traveling not too long ago. My daughter travels for basketball, and she's all over the place, and we were in an airport, and I was like, I didn't bring my book. I said, let me go grab a couple of magazines, at the little stand in the airport. And I get a couple of magazines, sitting down, and I'm flipping through magazines, and I'm showing her. Now she's on her phone, she had her earbuds, listening to Lord knows what. And I'm trying to talk to her about what I'm reading in the magazine. And she's like, okay, yeah, okay. And she's like, do you want me to take this off? I'm like, well, I'm trying to talk to you about what I'm reading in the magazine. And she's like, but you should just be reading. And I was like, no, that's not what you do with a magazine. With a magazine, you flip through and you go, look at this. Did you know that she had a facelift? This is what you do. Like a magazine, and then you pass them back and forth to each other. And it used to be, I'm going to go back to the manicure again. It used to be when you sat at the nail salon, if you were getting a pedicure, all the women, I'm getting heads nodded, right? Everybody had magazines. And you were chatting about Cosmo or this or that. People don't even pick up when is the last time you went to a newsstand and bought a magazine? Because everything's on our phones, right? So, just the change of the culture, getting the books into the classroom, getting kids' magazines into the classroom so that students, when they have a moment, that's what they go to. We're trying to sort of reculture that and to share with a friend. Talk about a book. Someone mentioned something about a book group. You mentioned a book group, Pat, right? Having students integrating book groups into our classrooms. Those are things that we're doing. So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. To close out our meeting, thank you both so much for being here. Such an important program, a very informative briefing. I think we have a much